right now. Okay. All right. So this is introduction to the syllabus of 116 for those of you who missed class today. All right. So first of all, for office hours, you can come, it's always after this class actually. So every Tuesday and Thursday after this class, you can just stay and you can come with any question or concern and we can talk. So those are my office hours, Tuesday, Thursdays at 6. All right, before I get into the logistics of the class, all the homework and stuff, let me talk a little bit what we're gonna do this semester. So this semester will be it's a course on the philosophy of religion, but I have narrowed it down to the problem of evil, which is a big problem. You cannot narrow it down to that, but I'm trying, right? So in other words, the main question that this class is trying to respond to, not answer, but respond to, is the issue, if there is a God, why is there so much suffering? Why is there so much evil in the world? Why do we suffer so much? If there is a God, how can he or she possibly allow this to happen? I've decided to teach this particular topic because it's a topic that I saw coming back over and over again in the students' essays, in the students' responses. That seemed to be the biggest stumbling block, right, to students, was this issue. If there was a God, how could he let this happen to me? Or this happen to my relative or to my friend? How could he not intervene? And this is really this is the difference. This often marks the difference between believing in God and losing one's belief in God, right? Suffering is really the crucible where we either come out with a stronger faith or we lose it altogether, right? So this class, we're not going to answer, obviously, the question, but we're going to respond to it through the lens of 7 different philosophers, right? So these are 7 different thinkers, sages, right? Who have themselves suffered and who have articulated a response to suffering. So we're going to study that. So now these sages, they are kind of spanned out in time and in space. They're not all from the same place. They're kind of, spread out all over the world. So I want you to kind of see this class as a study abroad class, because we will be traveling, right? We'll be traveling to distant places, to distant times, which will sometimes give us a bit of a culture shock, right? We have the barrier of culture, of language. This is all part of study abroad. So let me give you a little bit the itinerary of our journey. So we'll start with, let me get the right syllabus here in front of me. We'll start with a very ancient book of Job, right? I'm writing in the chat. This is one of the most ancient texts on suffering. This is basically a lament of one man who is suffering intensely, and he is basically lamenting to God, how could you let this happen to me when I was good to you, I was virtuous, I was faithful, why am I suffering when I was so faithful to you, right? So this is basically a book about one man's lament or rant against God because he perceives his suffering to be unjust and undeserved, right? So this is very, very powerful book, very ancient book, and a very subtle and complex book, which we'll start out with, right, to the book of Job. Then we'll travel a bit in time. We'll go to medieval times, and we'll stop in medieval Spain under the Golden Age of Islam. And we will study a Jewish philosopher called Maimonides and his book, The Guide to the Perplexed. Okay, so we're traveling now in space, in time. We are in Spain, southern Spain, Andalusia, with Maimonides, and he is writing a very interesting book on how to rise above suffering. Right? He doesn't try to, he explains it a little bit, but then he gives us a very interesting path above it, right? We are able, according to Maimonides, to rise above our suffering if we know how to properly use our minds, right? So we're going to study that a little bit. Then we'll stay in the Golden Age of Islam, medieval Islam, and we will go to what is present-day Afghanistan and meet their Sufi poet called Rumi, and we'll be studying his selected poems. Okay, so Sufism is a mystical branch of Islam that kind of developed in medieval times, and it kind of spread in the eastern part of the empire around Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan. You have a lot of Sufism there. And Rumi is, of course, writing about the experience of suffering. He's going to be very different from Maimonides because he's going to see suffering to be, in fact, a gift from God, right? That we need to receive graciously for the sake of our own purification. So very different approach to Maimonides. Then we will go to the black sheep of philosophy called Nietzsche. And Nietzsche is really someone who has also very much suffered and who has, in his suffering, become very disillusioned with the religion of his time, which was Christianity, right? So he writes a virulent, very powerful essay against what he perceives to be Christianity's escapist attitude with regards to suffering. So he's going to be criticizing Christianity because he thinks Christianity is just making up things to make us forget about our suffering, but is not really facing suffering head on, right? So Nietzsche is really the turning point of the class, because from then on, I'm going to be working on responding to Nietzsche, right? All of the philosophers that will come after Nietzsche will be in a way responding to him. He's really the pivot, right? He's of course an atheist, right? So we will be spending the second part of the semester responding to Nietzsche, finding ways of responding to this idea that for Nietzsche, religion is just a drug that helps us overcome suffering, but it's all a big fantasy, right? So that's a powerful criticism, which we need to address and take our time to address. So the next philosopher, so right, Nietzsche wrote The Twilight of the Idols. You can already see in the title, right, that he's thinking it's the end of religion. Everything is an idol, all these gods that we made up, they're idols, and now we are witnessing the twilight of the idols. Okay, so then responding to Nietzsche, Gabriel Marcel, and we'll read a very interesting essay called The Ontological Mystery. This is in the book Philosophy of Existentialism. I'm writing all this. Okay. And there we will see that for Marcel, suffering comes when we are disconnected from our true self. And so the key is to reconnect, right? And so that's really what he's going to be teaching us, how to reconnect to our deeper self so that we can avoid and escape despair, right? Then we will go to Emmanuel Levinas and we'll read an essay called Enigma and Phenomenon. A beautiful essay in his book, in a compilation, right? Basic Philosophical Writings. So this is also giving you the bibliography of the class. This is a very beautiful essay. Levinas is writing in the context of post-Holocaust. And so he is himself emerging from the Holocaust. His family, in fact, his whole extended family dies in the Holocaust, and he's really addressing the straight, like really in the face of suffering. He's really addressing the problem of suffering, and especially of where was God during the Holocaust, right? So he's trying to respond to this question, to this heart-wrenching question of where was God during the Holocaust. His response will be very interesting, and it will necessitate a redefinition of who God really is, right? We have to re-envision, we have to have a new vision of who God is if we're going to understand where he was during the Holocaust, right? And finally, we'll end with Simone Weil's Waiting for God. And this is really, she's our only female author. There's not many in philosophy, at least through history, right? But she wrote a beautiful meditation on waiting for God, on the ability to be patient through suffering, and what this patience can reveal to us at the end, right? Okay, so that's the program for us. And so I really encourage you, I mean, actually I don't encourage you, you are required to buy these books, right? Make sure you buy them, the right edition. The best way to do that is to go to the online bookstore. Let me show you briefly. Oh, I can't do that when I go, since I'm recording, I can't, I can't share my screen. But when you go to the website of the university and you go to the bottom of that website, there is a little rubric called bookstore. You click on that and then it will ask you to put some information. You can put my name, instructor, and then you'll see all the classes I'm teaching. You pick our class and there you will see all the books. You can buy them directly there. And it's really the best price. You'll find the best prices there. So if some of you still don't know how to do this, wait after class when I'm not recording and I'll walk you through it, okay? Good. So, okay. Now, before we get into the logistics, I want to give you a short initiation how to read philosophy. because it is actually, philosophy is going to be, if you've never done it, you're going to have, if you're not prepared, a very unpleasant experience. The main reason is that as soon as one takes a philosophy book in one's hand, you will realize that it is not as easy to understand philosophy than to understand history, or, you know, the newspaper, or even literature, right? Philosophers write in a very cryptic way, which is difficult to access, right? And you'll see right away as you begin to read some of these works that it's kind of going above your head, right? So it's difficult right now. The reason philosophers write like that is they are writing about something which is difficult to describe, right? Most people, when they write about reality. They write about what we see, right? Philosophers write about what is beyond reality. They write about this other dimension that is also part of being human, which is the dimension of mystery, the dimension of the invisible, the dimension of that which we cannot see, touch, right? But this is also part of what it means to be human. We are, in a way, citizens of two dimensions, right? So philosophers are talking about what we call the metaphysical dimension, right? So metaphysical means beyond the physical, right? Most books write about what is. Philosophy writes about what beyond, right? So that's why I believe it is difficult to understand philosophy, because they are trying to talk about something which is beyond, and which is, it's difficult to describe this, right? Okay, so here is the 3 virtues you need to have in order to successfully navigate a philosophy text. The first one is wonder. The second one is delight. And the third one is urgency. If you have these 3 virtues, the readings in this class will be a piece of cake. Okay, first one, wonder. So it's very easy. When you open the text and you realize you don't understand a word, it's not a problem, right? Because in this class, I don't expect you, when you read the first time, to understand anything. I do expect you to understand my lectures, but I don't expect you to understand the readings. Instead, I just want you to experience the readings. So I want you to enter the text with a spirit of wonder, exploration, curiosity. I wonder what this author is going to try to talk about. And it's okay if I don't understand everything, because I am nothing, right? This is how to be in a state of wonder is really to be also in a state of humility, right? You realize that I don't know much, but I'm now entering this cathedral of thought, and I'm curious, I'm exploring. I'm not trying to understand, I'm not trying to pinpoint, I'm just curious. That's the first virtue. If you have that first virtue, you're not going to get frustrated, right? Frustration comes when you try to understand or dominate or grasp, right? And here, the attitude of wonder, you kind of enter in a very relaxed way, kind of like a tourist. I wonder what's new, what are they gonna say? Okay, so that's the first virtue. Second virtue, delight. Now, this is very important, because when we don't love something, when we don't delight in something, we cannot become receptive to that thing, right? If I were to ask you, is there a class that you really hated, right? You hated the topic, you hated the students, you hated the professor. Well, guess what? You probably didn't do too good in that class, right? Because you were constantly allergic to it, right? So delight is really an attitude of openness. So I want you to read with delight. I want you to enjoy yourselves. In other words, you pick the best time of the day. When you're relaxed and you make some chai tea, you sit there, or you go to the park and you're there with your book and you're like, now let me see what Rumi is going to say. And you kind of enjoy the moment. Even if you don't understand, you just enjoy it. That's the second virtue. By the way, I am so serious about this enjoyment thing that if you are a slow reader, I prefer you read less and enjoy what you read then you read the whole assigned reading, right? So I'm really serious about this. If you're a slow reader and you're struggling and you start to develop resentment, right? I prefer that you read less and enjoy the few pages you read than that you read everything and you're like, your head is like a pumpkin. Okay, so now if you're a fast reader, you have no excuse, right? In fact, ideally, you should be reading the whole book, right? Just saying. Okay, actually, I used to assign the whole book. And then I had a mutiny in the class. That was like 10 years ago. And so I had to stop. They were like, we can't keep up. This is inhuman. So I had to stop. But I used to teach the whole book. I mean, assign the whole book. Okay, now we're ready. Oh, last one, sorry, last virtue, urgency. Okay, so this is especially important in this class. In this class, you're going to be, one of the assignments will be for you to reflect on your own spiritual journey through suffering. And so the class gets very personal, right? The class is really gonna touch these places in your heart that you've kind of kept hidden or, you know, kept away because you don't have time to deal with them. So in this class, you are going to really go back to this place, right? These questions that you used to have, right? You're going to go back to the woundedness you might have experienced and which might have closed up something in you, right? You're going to go back to these places, to the scenes of the crimes, right, that were committed against you, against your soul, against your intellect, right? And so this is an opportunity for you, this class, is to really go back and address these old wounds, right? A lot of us, when we were growing up, had a lot of questions, right, about God, about life. And little by little, life kind of has a way to just kind of like, just blow everything, right? It pounds you down so hard that your questions just become, you know, you kind of just put them away and you just try to survive, right? So there is in many ways we have lost touch of this kind of very natural thirst for the spiritual and very natural desire to question. So this class is really an opportunity for you to go back to where are you spiritually, right? Where are you? Right? And so these texts might actually be the answer you were looking for in the past, right? That you have kind of, you know, given up on. And finally, you might get, right, this opening that you were looking for. So that's why you must also read with urgency. In other words, who knows, maybe at any moment as you're reading the text, something might open up inside of you, right? You might all of a sudden, everything becomes clear, right? Or this weight is taken off your chest, right? So that shows the text because they speak to real life problems, right? They're not just acrobatics, intellectual acrobatics. They are supposed to be nourishing to your soul. They're supposed to be guides. They're supposed to be mentors. So at any point in the class, you might meet the guide that you've been looking for so long. So read with urgency. Maybe now, maybe finally I'll find it. Okay. Good. Any questions on anything I said so far? Anybody have a question? Okay, so let's get into the logistics, the assignments. Okay, if you're looking at your syllabus, the first thing you see is attendance, right? As you know, the course is taught synchronously. You are required to come to class like this. This was good. If, of course, you miss occasionally, that's okay. You have it on the YouTube. But be careful because sometimes when you miss, you'll lose points. I'm going to tell you how that works. So you need to be organizing yourself, right? But of course, you always have the lecture on YouTube in case you missed part of it and so forth, but the class is taught synchronously. So when you are in the class, I will ask that you please turn on your cameras like you're doing beautifully right now. That looks great. Because today I'm kind of talking by myself, but usually when I'm teaching, it's very back and forth. I'm constantly checking up on you. I'm constantly asking questions, responding to questions. There's a lot of dialogue and interaction. So that's why I ask you to, you know, keep your cameras on so that to facilitate, right, the interaction. Okay, first assignment. You will have regular readings, right? This is the main assignment of the class. If you look at your syllabus, I know it's going to come up upside down, but you have a bunch of, you know, page numbers, right? Each time you have a page number, that's a reading you have to do. And therefore, at the same time, you have a reading assignment. So reading assignment is very simple. It's one page, single-spaced, 4 paragraphs, okay? The first 2 paragraphs are questions you have about the text. I'll explain in a second. The second 2 are critiques, okay? So in other words, as you're reading, you will most likely come across sections in the text that you don't understand. Because you're like, oh, what does he mean by this word, this big word, or this expression, or this metaphor, right? And so this is one of the questions you can kind of ponder, reflect on, right? So in your first paragraph, you can say, oh, for example, I don't understand why the author says this like this, or I don't understand this word or this metaphor. And then for the rest of the paragraph, you try to answer it yourself, right? You use your imagination. Maybe the author means this, maybe they mean that. You can be completely wrong, it's fine, I won't count it off. It's just to get you started thinking about the text, right? Okay, so you do that for 2 paragraphs, so 2 different questions. And then the second 2 are 2 critiques. So this time you understood, but you disagree. I don't like what Nietzsche said, here's why, da 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 da. I don't like what Levinas said, here's why, right? And so this kind of assignment is really just an exercise for you to start wrestling with the text. This is the beginning of understanding, right? Okay, so this is pretty easy. You can't go wrong. Now, here's the part where you will miss. This assignment is only counted if it's handed in on time, meaning right before class time, right? So right before class time, the assignment should be in my folder. If not, I will not count it and you will lose 1 point. Okay, now it's only 1 point, but it's a big point. It's a point out of 100, right? This is the difference between a B plus and an A minus, right? 89 to 90. So it's an important point. So, so be careful, right? Make sure you hand those in on time in my Google folder. And by the way, in the folder, it will show RA and then the name of the author, right? For example, R.A. Job. This is reading assignment, right? Each time you see R.A., that means reading assignment. Okay, so that needs to be on time for it to be counted. If it's not there, it won't get counted and you will lose 1 point. Okay, next. So each time you have a reading assignment, when you come to class, you should expect a discussion, group discussion. This is when I'll put you in your little groups and you will be together looking at your reading assignment. So keep a copy for yourself, right? You'll be kind of sharing with the group your questions, your criticisms, and the group should respond, right? Don't you just sit there, right? Group, don't sit there, respond. You have a question, well, here's what I think, or you disagree. So you kind of, the reading assignment is really kind of a catalyst to your discussion. So the discussion is the first 20 minutes of class. And here's again the catch. You need to be on time for you to be able to do this discussion. In other words, if you are late and the groups are already formed, you will not be put into the group. You will have to hang out in the big classroom until everyone comes back in 20 minutes later. So you don't want, and if you're late and you don't make the discussion, you lose 1 point. Again, it's an important point, right? So you want to make sure in this class that you are on time, so that you don't have to sit out of the group by yourself, miserable, losing a point, right? So make sure you're on time so that I can put you all in the groups and we can start this smoothly, after which, if you see everybody's gone, then you know you're late. And you know you've lost a point. All right, so be careful, right? Be careful with sending the assignment on time and being on time to the discussion. This is important to keep a good framework for the class. If everyone comes whenever, it's very difficult to do the groups. This has been my experience this summer. Okay, all right, the main thing that will be difficult is the test. You have a test, in the syllabus it says at the end of each week, but that's not true. It's whenever we finish, the authors. So you have a test, and the test is you have the questions, so you can prepare. You have the questions at the end of your syllabus right here, right? So you have all the questions ahead of time. The test is essay. It's 1 page, single space per question. So a total of 2 pages, right? And you need 2 things to pass the test. I'm going to tell you right away because we're going to start class and you need to know this. 2 main things that you need to do good on the test. You need to have quotes to support your answers. And so that means that when I'm teaching, anytime I'm quoting, right? Anytime we're reading from the text, you are underlining in your text so that you can remember this quote, because I will expect to see that quote in your exam, right? So anytime you see me reading a quote, I will have given you the page. You would all be following. You will underline and make sure you have that quote. So quotes, so that's the first thing you need to do good on the test, right? Quotes. And the second thing is you need to have good lecture notes, because basically the answers will be based entirely on the lectures. Don't try to add anything, don't, right? But your lecture notes must be very well taken, right? You must take good notes so that you have a good nice, substantial answers. So basically, the best way to take notes is to write down everything I say. Try to write down as much as possible. You should be, I remember when I was taking notes in high school and college, I would not stop writing the whole time. The person was talking and I was writing. So you should basically, if you're taking good notes, you know you're taking good notes when you're basically typing the whole time or writing the whole time, right? There's a lot. I'm going to give you a lot of information. So get all of it together, because that will be the basis for your test answer. And the better your notes, the better your test answer, okay? So that's for the test. Now, also hand in your test on time, right? By the deadline. If you don't, again, you miss 1 point, right? So any late tests, you can hand them in. I'm gonna accept them, but you'll miss 1 point for lateness. Okay, last assignment. Any questions so far before I go to the last assignment? Anybody have any questions?
Will you record the lectures?
Yeah, I'm recording everything. So anytime you miss something, you can catch up, right? Because I understand things are a bit hectic, right? Sometimes there's an emergency, we're still in the COVID, so there should be a space allowed for you to crumble at some point if needed, right? Milgram, you have a question?
Yeah, so is nothing due until September 3rd? Because for September 1st, you wrote Job, but you didn't write like pages, so.
Exactly, you got it.
Okay.
Nothing is due until September 3rd. When I have just the name, it's just me introducing the author. There's no work due. Right, exactly.
I ordered the books, but I don't know when they're arriving.
Yeah, so you should be okay for the first week, because the book of Job you can also find in the Bible. So anyone doesn't get the book of Job on time, you can quickly find a Bible online or in your grandmother's attic, right? And you can just use that for the book of Job, right? It's in the Bible. So that will help you get your act together. And then
I don't have the Bible.
You can find online. You can find
okay.
online. Yeah, just BibleGateway.com. Let me write it down here for you. BibleGateway.com is a very good website where you can find the Bible, and you find the book of Job, right? And then you'll have the whole book laid out. I'm sure you find the PDF also online. Okay, any other questions on so far what I said?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For the book of Job, it says page 5 to 75 for September 3rd, but since every page is different, can you give us chapter numbers?
Yeah, good question, right? If in case you're using a Bible, right? If you don't have the book yet, you will read until God begins to speak. Sorry. I'm trying to type and talk at the same time. And begins to speak. So Job is speaking, his friends are speaking, and then finally God arrives and he has a long speech, right? Before he starts speaking, that's the first reading. Second reading is from the time he starts speaking till the end. Okay, so that's the marker. So if you're using a Bible, you read up until God begins his long tirade, right? And then the second reading is God until the end. Make sense? Okay, good. Any other questions? Okay. Everybody? Nice. Okay. All right. Let's go to the last assignment. The last assignment is a fun one. It's really the most pleasant one of the class, I think. Personally, it's also pleasant for me to grade. Last assignment is the essay, which is 1.5 pages single space, exactly 1.5. Please don't give me a big title page and start in the middle, right? You start at the top and then you finish on the next page half, right? Give me a good essay. The essay is very simple. You need two things. You need to try to go within yourself and ask yourself, where am I spiritually and what brought me there? Okay, we are not in the same place spiritually as we were when we were 5 years old, right? So tell me your journey a little bit. Where are you? What did you struggle with? Who have you become and why, right? Spiritually, in terms of your faith, in terms of your spiritual aspirations, desires, where are you at, right? So for example, I'll give you an example. Maybe you were raised Catholic and then something happened and then you had doubts and then now you don't know what to think and now you kind of put those doubts away because you're busy. So that's an idea of a spiritual journey. And now you don't know if you're atheist or right. I want you to go back basically to those old questions you used to have. What happened? What changed you? What moved you from where you were as a child to where you are today, right? And tell me a little bit, right? And then I want you to bring in the philosophers we studied that week, those 2 weeks or whatever, and tell me if there is anything in what we studied that resounded with you, right? That made your blood boil over, right? I don't know if you have these experiences, but when I read certain books or I listen to certain people, I feel like my blood, when it's very good, right? I feel like my blood is like, right? This is the idea, right? Is there anything in what we studied that brought you something, that you feel opened up something for you or helped you move out of a kind of a prison, right? Or you can progress nothing, right? Some person for like the 4 essays he kept on writing, I am now comfortably numb, right? So he had lost all feeling, right? And he couldn't get out of it, and that's fine. If the readings are making you regress, that's fine too. If the readings are doing nothing for you, that's fine. It's very personal, whatever, right? It's just you kind of like exploring yourself, your journey, and seeing whether there is anything that you are taking with you from the readings. That's the idea of the essay, right? Heartstark, you have a question?
Yeah, so does that mean that if you read something and you have like a very negative experience with it, you can write about that?
Yep, absolutely, right? Anytime your blood is curdling, either with joy or with anger, perfect, right? Anytime you have an emotional response to a text, there is an indication that the text is pushing something, right? That's what you want to explore. What is it pushing, right? So yes, absolutely. You can have a very positive reaction, a very negative reaction, or no reaction at all. That's fine too. It's your journey, right? So you just tell me, is there anything in the text that caught your attention that you feel is either nourishing or repulsive? Whatever, it works for me. Williams, you have a question?
So if it doesn't make you feel any type of way, then how do you get to the 1.5 mark?
Yes, that some people struggle. You have, it is impossible not to find one thing that either makes you mad or happy, right? So that I'm sure when you get into the text, you will start, your brain will turn on a bit and you'll have ideas, right? Right now you're like, I don't know, right? Now, if when you do your first assignment, you still have this kind of block, we can talk about it, right? Maybe some people, I allow them to write less as long as what they're writing is interesting. So we'll see how you do. But try to just, as we're teaching, right? You can actually, what can help someone like you who has trouble writing a lot, every day we have class, do a little journal. Type a little paragraph of your reaction. So you guys can totally do that. You can journal, you can do a kind of a journal of this class, right? Oh, today we learned this, I liked it, I didn't like it, it was interesting, here's why. So if you have trouble writing the whole 1.5 about your journey in general, you can do a kind of daily journal from the class. Does that make sense, Williams? Was that you? Did I get the name right? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Were you Williams? Williams. Who was it? Where'd she go? Where are you? Ah, there you are. Okay, does that answer your question, Williams?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. So if any of you have trouble like Williams writing up a full essay, you can do a kind of regular journal, just a little paragraph after class. Each day we have class. Okay, good. So that one, yeah. All of these assignments, right? They go in the Google Drive folder, right? In the little folders on test, essay, reading assignment. Okay, I think I am almost done. You'll notice that we have a few times where there's no class. That's just me. Okay, so follow your syllabus because there will be days where there's actual no class, and so you don't have to come. Right? You can see that, for example, September 10, there's no class except the SEEK review, which I'll talk in a second. October 8, likewise. October 22, there's no class. November 5. And this is in addition to the school holidays, right? So this is kind of, I wanted to put some oxygen in the class so that you have time to kind of because of the online thing also, there needs to be a bit of oxygen in my view. We're still finishing the program we would finish in a normal semester, but it works out here with the online having a few days off. Okay. All right, any questions on anything at all so far?
Is the test like a short answer style?
Essay, the opposite. It's a long answer style, which is why I told you, right? The test is based on your notes. If you want to have a good answer, write really good notes during the lectures, right? Because you'll want to have all of those notes into your test. So it's, yeah, it's 1 page, single space per answer, right? That's a pretty good, substantial answer. And you have 2 questions. So it's the total of 2 pages, right? The test. Okay, the other questions?